servant leadership anchor number 3, coaching during the game. And remember, you are recording?
I am.
Good. Schedule a day in the game. Okay, now here's another thing. You mentioned you mentioned make a lot of references to during a game or they're a game, and it's sort of a metaphor that we sort of use and come in and out of a little bit.
Yeah.
Are you married to the in a game idea? Because if so, we have to make it more prominent.
It's the language that I speak.
Yes.
So I would like us to kind of, like the one-on-one is coaching during practice, right?
Yeah.
And the connection meeting, yeah. I don't go as deep about the game and the connection meeting, but when you think about the connection meeting, it's being drafted and meeting the general manager before you start playing for the team, right? And then the weekly one-on-one is practice. Coaching during the game is actually watching live behaviors happen. Performance development, professional development strategies are really about taking a player from 10th in the rotation to the starting 5, and what are all the personal things they want to work on to get there to help them get to the starting 5. And then that last thing about performance reviews are really your contract renegotiation, right? And being very specific so the athlete and the leader both understand where they're at. But I don't go to my trainings, Mike, and say, okay, I'm going to teach you about servant leadership and it's going to be all about sports. It's just that some of them lend themselves really well to explaining it that way and people could grasp it. So like coaching during the game, the old school called it management by wandering around back in the 80s. Where I come from, it's similar. I've tweaked it with a lot of my own learnings over the last 20 years. And I don't find it resonates with anyone because it sounds almost fake. Like the definition, and it's genius and it's critical to be done, but like managing by wandering around. Well, like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, so the leader walks around and maybe helps out? Like, there's no accountability there, whereas you can tie that one directly to sports and talk about it as coaching during the game. People can quickly kind of put those two things together and go, hey, wait, I watch coaches during sports game. They're watching the actions. They're up and down off the bench. They're talking to the players. They're doing strategy. Oh, they're calling timeouts and they're giving, like, it's meatier than managing by wandering around.
And you find that resonates with all audiences?
Yeah, because when at least when I'm trained, it won't resonate with. I mean, if you don't like sports and you don't follow it, you might go, "What does he mean by coaching during the game?" But I think when you hear the description, you get it from a business perspective. It's all about the behaviors and observing them when they happen. Nothing's going to hit with everybody.
Yeah.
Like servant leadership doesn't hit with probably 50% of the people out there. They think it's soft and huggy. They think you can't measure it. They don't think it's a process. That's why I'm writing the fucking book. You can put it into a process. If you really want to serve people, you can measure it. You can make it concrete, and it's going to impact your people. So I'm not fussed if the sports analogy in that one gets lost, or it's not. If all 5 anchors aren't speaking sports, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the other tie-in we have to make is the millennial tie-in, and so it's and I still love the idea because it's such a great point of controversy. I'm not backing away from that at all. But what we have, these 5 pillars do not address that specifically. So we're going to have to sort of double back and insert like 5% more millennial content on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had servant leadership number 3, coaching during the game. Schedule a day in the game once a month, or if it doesn't happen, on the floor, manufacturing sales month ends for time, marketing camp. So I'm doing a very poor job of reading. Schedule a day in the game once a month. Doesn't happen on the floor, manufacturing sales month ends for accounting, marketing, camping, etc. What does that mean? So
the point is really schedule a day on the floor once a month. All those other ones are just examples for the different departments, because what you'll hear people say is, well, how do I sure, that's easy to do for a sales team because the sales center is open, or you can go to the retail store. No, you can go and observe your marketing team when they're working on a back to school campaign in retail. You can go and observe your marketing team when they're getting their heads together to build a launch. You can observe how they're working with their third-party agency, all those different things. So I try to explain it. Accounting's when they're doing their month end and putting all their books together, when they're doing customer service sessions with the individual department managers to review their numbers, budgets, blah, 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 all those things. So don't lose too much time on those points after. It's really about scheduling it. And the biggest thing there is CEOs, VPs, they try and lead from their desk too often. And so the whole first point is you need to put it in your calendar and you need to hold that sacred. So if you say to yourself, the 27th of every month, I'm the CEO of a home builder, I'm going on site. I'm going to see my teams building homes in the morning. And in the afternoon, I'm going to go with my after sales service people and I'm going to go visit them, manage a client escalation at a customer's house where we didn't build the home well enough. Oh, and then on the 28th of every month, I'm going to sit in the sales center. And then on that Monday, I'm going to watch marketing for 2 hours, whatever that looks like. And again, a CEO might want to do multiple departments. A department head just wants to do one example of their team. Put it in your calendar, hold yourself accountable to it. If you don't, it gets lost. And really the point's really to encourage people to get out there in the first place. You would not believe the amount of senior leaders who have never seen their customer or the product in the customer or services hands. It is like, it's like kryptonite to Superman. Like they'll talk about how much they value the customer and how everything's about the customer until something goes fucking wrong and then they run for the hills.
You know, you think of Richard, who was actually out there with the truck drivers and was out there with the potato pickers. When he was at Hostess.
Yeah, and he did the same thing at MLSE, man. That guy walked the building. He talked to the full-time staff. He talked to the part-time staff on an event night. He didn't just sit in the expensive seats and hang out with the board. I remember one of my first weeks at MLSE, he set up an appointment with Bob in advance. So he met Bob and I in the store. And I think Mike Evans was the manager. I'm not sure Glenn Knight was in there yet. And he walked in the store and he walked through the store and he watched the team sell. He talked to the part-times. He walked over to me as a new director and said, what's your strategy? What are you looking to improve? He coached like literally during the game in sports and entertainment. But he's that type of leader who wanted to be on the floor and observe what he was doing before he made any strategic decisions. And there are so many leaders that don't want to do it. They want to trust their managers to do it. That's their job. I don't have to go and do that. That's their job. Well, where do you get any context of how great your manager is maybe, or where they have deficiencies? And really the customer piece is critical, man. So many leaders don't want to have anything to do with their customers, especially when things are going bad. And that's the best opportunity to improve things. You get all the feedback from, maybe it's the after sales service person or the salesperson and the client and listening to that dialogue and going, I see what they like and I see what they think is broken. I got to go and I got to fix it from my chair. So yeah, it's the first point's not about so much, what you're doing out there, is that you schedule it. We talk about what you're doing in the next behaviors.
Beautiful.
So I get really passionate about that one. You can tell there's some past history there in certain stops that are upsetting.
Well, it's funny you would say that because the couple of times that I've kind of gone, it was again, we're not going to post this, but was the one where you were.
Well, I'm recording. Remember, I'm Mike. Remember, I'm recording.
Okay, well, maybe not post it. Then never mind that.
Yes, but
we'll leave that.
To your point, there are examples of where I could better illustrate that. But man, I'm not calling anyone out in the book. No problem. There's no, and even as a positive, I don't want anyone to read this book and get offended, because you know what? I've fucked up a lot too.
Y'all without sin can cast the first stone.
Right?
You like that? I just made that up.
Yeah. Way too smart for me though.
You have one agenda: observe and support. Now, how do you, if you're doing this, if you're coaching during the game, it's like when the teacher comes in and sits and the principal comes in and watches your classroom. Everyone knows the principal is there. So how can you make a reasonable assessment? And how can you observe and support if everyone knows you're there?
Well, that's a great point. Some people, they won't tell the team they're coming. So they'll schedule it in their calendar, but they're not going to call the team to say, I'm coming down to observe behaviors today. I always made my visits announced, and I was very transparent of what I was looking for. If you stay long enough, it doesn't matter how much someone prepares, you're going to catch them doing things really right, and you're going to see areas of opportunity where you can help them succeed. You will find those feedback moments, even if they know you're coming. What you want to do is find out what they need to be successful. That is like a huge part of your mission. It's not like going down there just to coach them on, what they're doing well and what they're not doing. It's getting hurdles out of the way. Oh my God, I watched you sell. I get it. My God, that new digital board that we bought, which was supposed to make things easier when we saw the software, it's a pain in the ass for you and the customer to manage on a busy day. I observe that. I got to fix that. Let me take it back. I hear you now. So it really doesn't matter that you don't announce it. Sorry, that you do announce it. And remember, you're supposed to be out there catching people doing things right.
Yeah.
Like that's your goal. It doesn't mean you don't take the coachable opportunity. That's why it's called coaching during the game. But you're also recognizing what they're doing well, and you want to take back what you want to take off the floor to fix to bring it back to the team so they can be successful.
Right. So that really speaks very neatly to the second one, which is sort of observe and support. What else do we want to, other than, well, I guess we kind of nailed it there, didn't we?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add to observe and support?
No, not yet. Well, I think I talked about picking up the broom later on. So
catch them, number 3, catch them doing things right and provide specific, immediate, behavior-based feedback with a value statement. We touched on this, but expand on it if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I mean, you're out there to see what they're doing well that's allowing them to be successful, and what you want to do is see them. You want them to repeat that behavior because it has an impact. But if you just say to someone, and I'll use the sales world because that's where I was for so long, hey, great sale. Okay. Right? Like, what does that mean? And I can go back to like Mark McRae, who was my district manager in Champs, when he'd come and watch us on the sales floor in St. Bruno. And our manager was this excellent guy, Andre Giroux. I was really blessed to work for some great leaders. But Mark would come down from Waterdown, Ontario to St. Bruno, Quebec, and he'd watch us sell. And when he was there, he was helping out and folding shirts and on the floor. And he'd walk over and come over and say like, hey, that was a great sale. The minute you sold them that Air Jordan, which the client obviously need based on the questions you asked them, they're very, big on fashion and wanted the latest, greatest basketball shoe, but it was functional, but also fashion. Did a really good job suggesting that product. You took them right over to the Jordan apparel. And you asked them what they wore when they were wearing these shoes. And did they want anything that would match, and what would that look like? And then I love when you came to the cash, before you let them go, you knew the person was spending $219 on these pair of shoes, and you asked them how they were going to protect them. And you were able to sell them a $6.99 can of spray. Mark, I'm not fussed that is, by the way, a high margin product for us. It's $6.99, believe it or not. It's like 90% margin. But you showed them how it works, and you showed it on the shoe, and you showed it that it's waterproof, and you're gaining the customer's confidence as you're building the sale. So that's tremendous. So thank you. That's what allowed you to have a $500 sale. That is giving specific feedback that's behavior-based with a value statement that is, hey, it's good for profitability, it's good for customer service. Now I know exactly what senior leadership wants to see me do.
Gotcha.
So it's timely, it's specific, and there's a value statement. Why is it important? For you, for the customers, for the company. Sorry.
No, you're good. Take time out to coach. Coach efficient behaviors immediately by example, and then have the player do show me live. What do you mean by that, Mark?
Yeah, so the same way a coach would do it in sports, at a timeout, they see, someone is cheating on defense in basketball, right? They're not moving their feet quick enough, and their footwork's causing them to get beat. At the timeout, you'll see a coach pull a player aside, or an assistant coach who may be assigned with talking to them, and you'll literally see them standing in position and showing them shuffling their feet. And they're talking about the behavior they want to see corrected. And then you'll see the player go, okay, well, so you want me to go here and move? Okay, and you see them point, I got it. And then they go back out on the floor and they demonstrate the behavior. They'll come to the next timeout, and the coach will say, yeah, that's a great job. You've done that exactly right. Same thing in business. You observe a customer walk into a sales center and they're not responded to for 5 minutes. They walk around, no one greets them, no one says hello. The sales manager will pull them aside, or the senior leader in this instance, and say, hey, listen, you know what? One of the things in our sales training, the first step is greeting every customer within 60 seconds. How do you think you're doing with that today? Especially the last customer. Oh, it took me quite a while. Okay, but you do understand what we expect. Yeah, it's 60. And then they go and they greet the next customer, and it's within 60 seconds with an open-ended question. I'm going to pull them back, and I'm going to validate that behavior once they've repeated it because they've done the show me. What I will do, depending on the level of the employee and how long they've been there, sometimes people just make a mistake and they just need to be called on it and reminded. But some people, they have to learn the behavior. I'll demonstrate it. So, hey, let me take the next customer and let me show you what I mean. And I'll demonstrate that on the floor, get them to see it, then have them repeat the behavior.
Okay, coach example, and then have the players do it. You must enjoy. That must be fun, eh? To actually sort of slip into that role and sort of like you get to play for a second and go back to actually demonstrate. Did you enjoy that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I played team sports growing up. Like my first individual sport wasn't until I was an old fart who wanted to drink beer on grass. Then I started golf, but like, and I didn't really golf as a kid. I didn't play tennis. I did cross country running in high school, but there was still a team element to that because your points collected for the team and you can win. But I played soccer and I played volleyball and I played football, I played hockey, and what I always loved was that engagement as a player and getting feedback from the coach. And then when I went on and played college volleyball, Mike, I went back and coached. I coached the high school team. I coached my college. I always enjoyed watching a player get better. And I always enjoyed the body language and the facial expressions when you got them there and that confidence grew. So yeah, that's the part of the business I love the most. I think some of the people I've coached along the way, I think probably like, okay, man, like I get it, feedback, and they probably had enough. And that's my deficiency. I have to know when to shut up a little bit and let the person run. But it's definitely a passion of mine. And it's a core behavior you have to have as a leader is to help people get better at what they do and care about it.
Process number 5, process feedback from team members is gold. Find out what they need to succeed and satisfy your customers. Find out the hurdles in their way so you can improve their success in the future. That one seems self-explanatory, but I'm still going to have to explain it anyway.
Yeah, it is pretty self-explanatory, but like when you're out there, talk to your customers. Hey, what could we be doing better? What do you like about our service and product? How was your experience today? Customers always want to talk to a senior leader who comes in the store and stops them on the way out, or comes into a sales center, or goes into their home. Depending on what industry you're in, they love that opportunity to give feedback. It's really good reputation for your brand, especially when the feedback's negative. Believe it or not, if you take that feedback and then close the loop with the customer, the employee, a manager, it just drives trust. And what happens is it allows you to think more clearly on your operational and your strategic decisions. I've been a part of senior management teams where you're like, hey man, these guys and gals are coming into this room and they're on point. They were out in the field before this happened. They talked to their team. They got prepped. We can trust the feedback coming in because we've heard it from the customer. We've seen it on the floor, et cetera. And then I've been in other senior management teams where you're like, hey, my peers just like fucking playing darts here. Like they're just like, I think we should do this. And the sad part is in strategic planning, the senior leader's idea gets rolled into the plan. And it's all there in front of leaders. It's right there with your team. It's right there with your customer, not in a survey, which is important. Customer surveys are critical, but in the moment of truth, go out and observe it. I've been in some companies where I've had sales, marketing, operations, customer service, and Mike, I took a shit kicking. Like I would literally at BMO Field, I'd go out there and the fans would friggin' chirp me about how long the beer lines were in the first summer. I went on a podcast with 2 of the Red Patch Boys in the first summer. The guys were great, but they were giving it to me like, hey, like what's going on at halftime? And by the way, can you get a bunch of security guards that don't look like they're looking for a fight? Or like everybody had a complaint, but when I heard enough of it, I was able to strategize around it because I could trust the feedback. And I've been in home building companies where customers have felt severely disappointed with the most expensive purchase in their life. And you walk in the suit and you go into their home, and the worst thing you can do is say, yeah, I know what's wrong. We're going to fix it. And what I always did was take me from the beginning, show me everything that's upset you, and tell me what it's meant to your life. And the power from that, not only on regaining the customer's trust now when you go back and deliver it, but strategically what you can do to fix the business, it's tremendous. And the feedback is in front of senior leaders. The problem is sometimes they just don't want to go out and get it.
So why is that?
Fear. You're going to hear you're going to hear excuses about time. You're going to hear excuses about that's what we hire middle management to do. I'm not asking
Yes.
CEOs and VPs to be out in the field 7 days a week. But you got to get out there once a month and see what's going on. 12 times a year in your multi-million-dollar business, you can't get out in front of a customer or your team and be in the moment with them and learn a little bit about your business. And I don't mean fear. They're afraid, like, well, I guess that's what fear means, but it's fear of what they're going to hear, right? It's fear of,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's worse than I thought. It's fear of, oh my God, they're going to dump all the problems on my plate and I'm going to be stuck with them. It's fear of disappointing people, because sometimes a P&L tells us a different story of what our employees and our customers tell us. There are successful companies that are letting down their people and letting down their customers on a regular basis.
Right.
That happens. And I'm not pointing fingers. I've been a part of that problem in the past.
Yeah.
But you need to be aware of it so you can make strategic decisions based on that, not on just a circle of people who are never out there talking to the customer, seeing how their product impacts people or the people that deliver it. So getting out and coaching during the game is critical. Now, the further you go down the org chart, right? So the CEO is looking for high level stuff, getting out there less frequently, but still the VPs getting out a little more frequently to their teams. The directors and managers should be out there supporting on a relatively regular basis, especially the managers. So it looks a little more intense and a little wider depending on your level in the organization.
Hold yourself accountable, take process feedback with you to the support team in the office and close the loop with the team in the field. Tell me about that.
So whatever you see out there that is a hurdle to the customer or a hurdle to your team delivering, you take it back to the support team, whether that's head office, whether that's a senior management team, whether it's a committee, whether it's a task force, whatever that looks like, to change a process to make it easier again for your team back in the field to deliver what the customer truly appreciates. So you hold yourself accountable for saying, here's what I heard today. Here's what I plan on doing about it, but I've got to go back and I've got to get this process change done and I'll keep you updated. And then you come back and when it's delivered and you report back on how the new process is going to look and why, and reinforce with the employee that you heard them. And please give me feedback if this isn't what you needed.
And again, people are hesitant to do that. To me, it's hard. That it's one thing to hear it. It's one thing to hear because then you can just put it in the vault. You can just go, oh, okay, fine. But to actually hear it and then turn around and take the feedback with you to the support team in the office and figure that out. If these people don't want to get in front of people, that would be the worst part.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This is the whole premise of servant leadership. The higher you go up the chart, the more you should be serving other people. And we do the reverse. We think the CEO shouldn't serve anybody. And we think the VPs are in a position of approving strategic direction and making all the calls. Hey, that's part of it. But they're supposed to be serving the directors who are serving the managers who are serving their teams. And so whenever you come back and say something's broken, but it's worked for so long, the farther you're away from it and feeling that pain, the more resistant you are to creating the change because A, you don't trust it because you didn't see it, or B, it's too much work and why would we change if things are okay on the P&L? But what happens is, deficiencies in companies that can't scale start at the customer. That's your first red light. Customer is giving feedback that they don't like this that you do anymore. Then it goes to either sales or customer service. And then that jumps around between them and manufacturing or production or whatever that looks like. And then it eventually gets up to the senior executives, to the CEO's desk. And however long that takes for this most senior person to acknowledge and accept, that's how much friction you're going to feel as you're scaling. Whereas if you can get that individual and the C-suite and the VPs down on a regular basis to see it and observe it, that process buy-in will happen faster. But yes, it is painful. Process change, especially if it's worked for you for a long time, it's the last thing you want to do. You want to blame people first. You want to tell the customer what they want, and then you'll accept it when nothing's changing.
Pick up the broom and connect walk some steps in their shoes. Why is that important?
You got to feel what your team goes through so you can empathize when you're coming to difficult points in your organization's growth. So I'll give you an example. I mean, I still can't put a nail in the wall, Mike. It makes you wonder, how did I become the president of a home building company? How did I
It
become,
does, yes.
yeah, how did I become the VP of sales, then the VP of client services, and the VP of IT for one of Ontario's biggest home builders, and then become a president of a home builder in the GTA? How does that happen if I still don't know part 9 of the building code off the back of my hand? Well, it happens because I build a servant leadership culture that I'm talking about. It's the reason I've been able to go from retail um, to sports and entertainment to food service to printing to construction. Is the transferable skill set goes along and can be impactful in all those industries. Why I'm so passionate about what I do. The reason I talk about picking up the broom is that's your opportunity to learn and empathize. So when I started at the last stop in my career as a president, I just went out into the field with the guys while they were building houses. And, did all my health and safety stuff, got my boots, got my heart out, got my vest, and out I went. And the guys would literally, I would walk in and they're looking at me like, oh my God, the president's here. Some guys that I still don't know. And I'm going, guys, what do you need me to do today? And they're afraid to tell me. And I'm like, no, guys, like, what's the shitty job that I can't screw up? Like, tell me what the shitty job is that you hate to do that even I can't screw up. And the first brave guy goes, here's the broom, man. Go sweep out the foundation. Okay, off I go with dust flying in my face and none of my guys in uniforms. And I go, man, like, I get why they want branded uniforms. One, they want to be proud. But two, these guys must be going through clothes like there's no tomorrow. And by the way, like, hold on a second. I haven't scaled big enough yet as an organization. I need to make that happen because I can't have my site super picking up the broom too regularly, as an example. It's not that I don't want them to do it. It's not that they're not bigger than that. But the guys are like, Mark, I can't do my quality checks anymore. Like, we want to be really good with quality, but I'm on the broom all day long. And so me picking up the broom goes, I get it. Like, they told me to sweep the foundation. Now, granted, it's me and I'm slow, and it just took me like an hour and a half. Like, that's an hour and a half that I'm going to give them heck for that they didn't do their quality control checklist down the road, but I've put them in that situation. So you get two things out of that. You get to see it so you can empathize, and you gain their trust. Pick up the broom. Now, that was a literal example of picking up the broom. But when I go to a sales launch, I'd run around and I had one of the best salespeople I've ever had in my career. Her name's Denise Tari, and I've had a bunch. Um, and Denise would be crushing this high-rise project, and I'd be just running and getting her paperwork, like greeting customers at the door, doing whatever she needed me to do for her. That was picking up the broom for her while I was observing the behaviors going on. And again, I use Denise. God, I could call out. I had so many great salespeople in my career, but she's the first one that comes to mind because that example of running around the sales floor. And I used to do that actually for Deborah and Emily at Solterra, and Belinda at Explorers Walk, and Chris and, geez, come to think of it, Chris and Debbie, come to think of it, that's probably all I did at Fusion was go and get paperwork. but that was intentional, Mike. It's intentional because then those salespeople know that when you go to the well and you ask them to do something, it's when I talk about all the anchors coming together. In that first anchor, I talked about the emotional bank account on the first meeting.
Yeah.
When I'm running and getting their paper and getting their lunch on a launch or whatever it looks like so they can do their job, I'm putting deposits in the emotional bank account. So when I come back and say, I hear you, but I got to disagree and we need to go in this direction, subconsciously and consciously they go, okay, but he gets it. He's not making this decision from a desk. He's seen how crazy launches get. I got to trust him, and I might fight a little, but I got to have his back because he's had mine. Picking up the broom does that. It builds connection.
No distractions. Leave the phone in the car or the office. Why is that important?
By the way, I would hope that people, when they read this book, don't think you have to be really good at these right away, and you always will be, because yes. I've been guilty of, some of the things I say not to do through my career way too often. The phone's the
Sure.
worst. There's always a reason for my iPhone to be in my hand. Um, and your team sees it. Like, are you here to help me or are you here to do something else? Because if you're really here to do something else, why don't you just take off and do that? But when you put that phone away and you engage and you talk and you listen to me for the 4 hours that you're here at my retail store or my sales location or our marketing campaign meeting or our finance month end or whatever that looks like, now I know you're observing what I have to deal with and what I have to do. And that means more to me than you playing with your phone. So put the phone away and be fully engaged.
Is that hard to do?
Freaking right. The higher you go, the harder it is. Because
Why is that?
well, again, it depends on the individual. You know, I was never that guy who had to work 12-hour days. Like I just didn't. And I believe it's because you put these servant leadership anchors in place. You empower your team to do their job. And you don't have to be playing whack-a-mole all the time if you get those consistent behaviors across the plate. My bugaboo for that comes from actually what I believe is a positive thing. You'll have noticed this, Mike. I can call it out now. When you send me an email, you get a response pretty darn quick, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And I would tell you that anyone who's on my LinkedIn, if they comment or like one of my posts, I respond to
Yeah.
it almost right away.
Yeah, you really do.
I have notifiers on my phone for all these apps, like everybody does. But it's funny, you know, I talk about things you learn from good leaders and bad leaders, and I learned something from a leader that I had friction with. And the older I get, the more I'm realizing I learned a lot of positive stuff too from this individual. And I won't name them because now it's going to talk about the friction piece. And I'm trying to be positive about actually what I learned from someone at the time I had difficulty with. And he shared with me that speed was a differentiator because of the urgency you're showing the person communicating with you. And urgency
Yes.
builds trust. And
Yes.
it's crazy. It's become a differentiator for me. People are like, man, you responded right away. Like, oh, I commented. I didn't even think you'd comment back. Or like the feedback I get, and it's just a human behavior now for me. Having said that, it has its downsides. So when I'm out in the field with a team member that I haven't seen, my phone goes away. It's the only time.
Do you tell them you're putting the phone away?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you make a point of saying, okay, this is just like pinned down, right?
Yeah,
phone off, phone out.
And you can call me on it. The only time I will say I'm going to keep my phone on, and here's the reason. And we have a rule of engagement that says, okay, yeah, it is an emergency. I get it, Mark. You've got to take that if you know, the CEO is calling you today and you're the president and there's something you guys are dealing with. That's cool. But I'm not picking up my phone to check emails while I'm in your store or I'm at your sales location or we're with a customer, whatever that looks like.
Meet your customers with your team, understand the experience and how to improve or recognize them. This sort of speaks to a little bit of what we talked about earlier, but how can we distinguish this one, number 9?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go back to Denise and Deborah and Emily and oh gosh, Belinda, and I can't believe I'm forgetting people here. And they're my most recent team at Fusion before Dunsire. Chris and Debbie. My gosh, I can't believe I forgot Chris and Debbie. They're the ones who tease me the most. And Mary. There were so many great people at Fusion on the sales team. Where I'm going with this is, how do I best put this? Rephrase the question so I don't go on too long and I don't. No, not rephrase.
Oh, sure.
Repeat the question because I'm going to go off on a tangent.
Meet your customers
Yes.
with your team. Understand the experience and how to improve or recognize.
Okay, so back to all those great salespeople. Being on the floor and seeing what they do in front of their customer and seeing the impact the customers felt, how positive they felt about that experience, greeting that and seeing it was so powerful for me to value my team and know what they were going through and retain them and keep them motivated because they truly were the best at what they did. And watching our customers say that in the moment was so important to me. So that was tremendous. And the other one is watching your team and being there for them when they have to deliver bad news or take a little bit of a beating. You know, my after sales service team at that previous life, they got beat up a lot. And it's no fun to be the person that has to go face the customer because they're not happy with their $1 million home that person in client services didn't build. But you're a team. And, you know, the construction guys usually build great homes and they messed one up and there's some deficiencies. So what? We're all into this together. Go help. But it is hard for someone to take that verbal abuse from a client. And to be there to support them and see it and say, I'm sorry to the client. I'm the vice president of the company who's accountable for this team. I'm also accountable for the team who sold you your home. And your experience was not good. It's not warranted. And if you want to yell at someone, yell at me. I'm also the person who's going to call you on Monday and tell you what we're doing about it. That is like, as a senior leader, that's when you can really find out what your team and your customers are going through, is seeing it in the good times and the bad times.
Finally, wrap up and debrief. Thank you. End your day with recognition and observations, but also ask the team what they need to succeed. Always thank you. Last 2 words before.
For how I treated that person.
Well, so here's a story I'm going to share with you. And okay, now you have to turn it off.
Okay. Hold on.